Hello and welcome to the topic Introduction to Counselling. Introduction. This chapter tries to present the basic concepts that are essential to understand counselling process in relation to guidance practice. The discussion provided in this chapter treats counselling both as a goal-directed process and as specific means for consummating this goal. In fact, understanding counselling in relation to guidance gives it more clarity. In guidance, counselling has assumed new dimensions and responsibilities. In the school setting, counselling is treated as intentional or purposeful understanding and assistance given to students to make them capable of dealing their problems in an effective way. Any process of counselling in that sense is a process of sharing mutual help and consideration engaged by two or more people. Counselling can be defined as a person-to-person process in which one person is helped by another to increase in understanding and ability to meet his problem. This definition does not get into the intricacies of the process. Yet it is helpful to get an idea what counselling is not. Counselling is not simple advice giving or sharing of confidence. Rather, it is an organized process where the counselor and the counselee meet in an atmosphere of mutual trust and understanding. The practice of providing counselling existed in all cultures from time immemorial, but it was not treated as a separate profession. These days, counselling is a tangible profession which has its own clear definition and counters to assert its identity from rest of the care-giving services. The elements, the goals, functions and the processes are well in place in a modern counselling setting. It still remains a personal service, but the roles or functions of each of team members involved in it are well defined. Carefully worked out or systematic counselling have certain principles and goals to provide orientation to the counsellor and the counselee. Organized counselling services works with the individual to increase in knowledge of self, solve immediate problems, reduce tensions resulting from frustrations, improve in the skills and knowledge required to solve this problem. The counsellor acts as facilitating agent in the appraisal of personal problems. Counsel tries to engage with the immediate problems that haunt the individual and the roots of the problem which lies elsewhere. This process looks decisively simple, but it has been observed that this process of one-to-one interaction is complex and it takes utmost care to make it fruitful. An adequately structured interaction session can lead to maximum involvement from the client and in turn result in increased efficacy. The basic elements that appear consistently in all counselling sessions are as follows. Personal communication between client and counsellor in a professionally controlled or guided situation. Appraisal and understanding of the individual and of environmental aspects of the problem situation and its possible outcomes. Evaluation and correlation of pertinent personal and non-personal factors in the problem situation. Adjustive, oriental or developmental aid to the individual through conveyance of information, interpretation of data, provision of the means or facility for self-appraisal and clarification of motives and values, referral to environmental opportunity or other modes of assistance. Counselling services offered at school responds to these broad frameworks, but they are more specific in their requirements. The studies and research on counselling always focus on the needs of the severely maladjusted individuals. Though it is true that any cross-section of a school population contains such people, it cannot be adequately represented or addressed with such a skewed perception. Rather than inheriting the problems of mental health profession in a mindless way, school counselling program must be able to handle everyday problems of students and ensure psychological well-being. This poses a unique kind of challenge in front of the professionals who design the counseling services for a school. They should take into account a range of problems and needs. These include skill deficiencies, anxieties related, socioeconomic, cultural and religious status, vocational indecisions, familial tensions, health problems, and problems with academic achievement. An effective counseling program will be able to address all these problems without falling into medicalization and pathologization. Understanding counseling. The above discussion has treated counseling as an intimate and personal care giving service where an individual can come up with personal problems. But this does not mean counseling functions in social or cultural vacuum. It is very much situated in the social context of family, school and community. It is not easy to compartmentalize the process, especially in the case of a student whose behavior in the formative stages is being influenced by many factors such as parents, immediate peer group, etc. So, the welfare of the individual is based upon the mutual cooperation of all those who are involved in the upbringing of the individual. A counseling program can benefit a lot from the awareness that the individual is shaped to a great extent by his social context, but at the same time, too great an emphasis on the group out of which the child derives his impetus is also to be avoided. The efficacy of the program lies in finding an adequate balance between the uniqueness of the individual and the social constraints or conditions placed upon him or her. The ideal goal of a good counseling program lies in the conscious effort on the part of the counselors and the teachers to avoid extreme of either position to attempt to maintain a healthy balance between development of the individual and preparation of group living. Another factor that is crucial in understanding the nature of counseling is the nature of the relationship. Rather than considering it as a set of preconceived set of principles, one can treat it as a dynamic process that is flexible and adapts to the situation or the needs of the counselee. The efficacy of the program lies heavily on the nature of the relationship between counselor and counselee. The counseling situation should be so organized that the client will make his contribution to it as well as the counselor. To accomplish this purpose, the counselor has to demonstrate in voice and gesture that he accepts fully the client as a worthwhile person who has genuine problems which the two can solve together. The counselor has to feel a real interest in the client since there is no substitute for sincerity. People intuitively sense the lack of concern, if there is any, in the process. However, it is unarguable that the client must feel himself accepted by the counselor. The degree of acceptance must emerge out of the counseling situation itself. Two basic features that define the counselor. Counseling relationship are objectivity and involvement. This may sound contradicting because the presence of one naturally nullifies the other. But it is the duty of the counselor to remain sensitive to these needs. Involvement refers to the ability to empathize and to give oneself the freedom to express the feeling. Objectivity, on the other hand, refers to the extent which the counselor is able to maintain a clear differentiation from the client. But there is one more crucial aspect to the counseling relationship which goes beyond the two above mentioned factors. It is the feeling of warmth, and it refers to a kind of spontaneity in interpersonal relationship which makes the relationship real for the client. When warmth is lacking in a counseling situation, it is often due to the lack of awareness from the part of the counselor about the problem of the counselee. In most cases, the counselor presses for a conclusion or a definite statement of the problems. But the fact is that the counselor should make an attempt to make the issue available for examination for the client, so that the client can come up with clearer analysis of it. It is always true that the counselor will be hard pressed for time. But that doesn't mean he or she cannot initiate the process of self-introspection within the client, a process that is ultimately helpful to arrive the greater goals of counseling than to achieve the immediate resolution of the problem. The counselor in that sense becomes a true facilitating agent who can provide direction to a course of action of thought, but it is never the decision maker who can make decision on behalf of the clients. A well-defined counseling program will have clearly set functions for the counselor, and there will be a team to fall back upon in cases of crisis emerges. The school counseling situation presents an extended picture where the counselor is in touch with the class teacher, peer group to parents. All these people are active agents who can help the individual to achieve the desired goals. This discussion shows the social elements creep into the process, which is imagined as a one-to-one session in the forms of peer group and family and community. The counseling process can be considered as a socially dense process where the uniqueness of the individual finds its expression. The balance between these different elements makes the process fruitful. The goals of counseling. What is the real goal of counseling? Or are there many goals to counseling? Is it helping someone in distress? Is it teaching an individual to adjust well in society? Is it about learning to deal with emotional problems? The following discussions tries to engage with the misconceptions around these questions that would help us create awareness about the goals of counseling. To begin with, we have to engage with the idea of adjustment. What is at stake here is the how to adjust efficiently without losing one's individuality. Adjustment is not about blind conformity. Adjustment in terms of a balance between restraint and expression is what counseling can and should offer. While adjustment is still treated as a major goal of counseling, it is realized increasingly these days that the individual is in a sense never completely adjusted, since complete adjustment would mean a cessation of activity. Counseling is treated as a dynamic practice in which the individuals help to develop in terms of changing conditions. Another major issue in defining the goal of counseling is the idea of counseling as helping. This understanding can act as a stumbling block in arriving at the complexity of the process. It is not to deny the fact that counseling can help people, but it is not naive altruism that guides the counseling process. The responsibility of a decision primarily rests with the counselee and not with the counselor. The counselor, instead of taking away an individual's decision-making capacity, tries to enhance it through respecting it and reassuring it. That is how counseling realizes its potential as a helping profession. Another issue is regarding the temporal framework employed to understand counseling process. Every stage of life has particular problems, and this need makes counseling a continuous process. It is true that an individual is exposed to counseling services in the face of a crisis. But the model of care offered by counseling does not come up with an instant solution. It tries to understand and elevate the root cause of the problem. This cause might not be in the immediate environment of the individual, but might be falling elsewhere. In such situation becomes a continuous process of extending support for a long period of time. People at any stage of their life can benefit from counseling. The goals of counseling are broadly divided into three. They are inculcating social skill, developing emotional balance, resolution of conflicts, and development of self-concept. Inculcating social skills. Counseling as a means of improving social adjustment is based not only upon the needs of the individual but also upon the needs of the community. Mere proficiency at a given task is not enough to function well in society. The individual, no matter what his area of endeavor may be, will have to understand how to get along with society and tackle interpersonal relationship. So counseling here tries to come up with a picture of balanced living where the person is in harmony with his or her immediate community and the demands and expectation placed by the community on him. Resolution of conflict. All of us are facing conflict of one sort or of another in each moment. In our attempt to live a balanced life, we have been striving to overcome one obstacle or another. In fact, this continuous problem solving helps us to adapt to the challenges placed by the environment and to survive. The inability to resolve conflicts can disorient the individual and create feelings of helplessness and confusion. Counseling, along with other guidance techniques, can assist an individual to find out effective coping patterns and techniques. A prolonged exposure to conflicts and inability to resolve them can lead to maladjusted behavior patterns within the individual. Counseling can help the individual in two ways. Through creating a relationship of trust and empathy, the counselor can help to arrive at a better understanding of the problem faced by the individual. Counselor can also act as a facilitating agent in preventing further maladjustment by early recognition of undue conflict on the part of the individual. Conclusion. The ultimate goal of counseling is the development of a mature self. In order to achieve this goal, counseling must give preference to the development of self-concept. Self-concept can be understood through the outward expression of self, namely self-expression. Self-expression is a means of communication between people, whether it is done through the play of a child or verbalization of an adolescent. Self-expression is not just written or spoken language. It ranges from one-to-one communication to artworks that expresses high levels of complexity. So it is not easy to assume that self-expression will come up for observation in a simple and self-revealing manner. It requires great insight to understand the modes of self-expression human beings have developed and still developing. It should be understood both in its singularity and its collective manifestations, the individual self-expression and self-expression that crystallize as art or knowledge. Understanding the working of the one is essential to decode the other, or in other words, they are mutually reciprocating registers where the working of one can affect the other. Though very limited in scope, counseling tries to understand these different and unique forms of self-expression in order to arrive at a better understanding of social and psychic self of the individual. A good counseling program should take into account all the sedimented and crystallized forms self-expression available in a culture, but the focus will be on the individual self-expression and the factors that affect it. The development of self-expression certainly depends upon social stimulation and the freedom to spread the ideas resulting from such stimulation. Self-expression is not only a means of communicating hopes and aspiration, but also a ventilator to channelize the anxieties. So understanding and analyzing them is important to get an insight into the motivations of an individual, which will in turn help increase the efficiency of the counseling program. Counseling tries to understand what is the mode of self-expression, how it gets structured in that particular fashion, and why it gets structured in that particular fashion. Once the counselor gains an understanding of the deep-rooted needs and motivations that guide an individual's self-expression, he or she can help the individual to arrive at a better understanding of the working of the self. It is through creating this awareness, counseling process contributes to the growth and maturation of a well-functioning self. Let us summarize the main ideas in this session. This chapter tries to present the basic concepts that are essential to understand counseling process in relation to guidance practice. The discussion provided in this chapter treats counseling both as a goal-directed process and as specific means for consummating this goal. Counseling is not simple advice, giving or sharing of confidence. Rather, it is an organized process where the counselor and the counselee meet in an atmosphere of mutual trust and understanding. Organized counseling services works with the individual to increase in knowledge of self, solve immediate problems, reduce tensions resulting from frustration, improve in the skills and knowledge required to solve this problem. There are many misconceptions about the goals and means of counseling. These misconceptions interfere with the effective functioning of counseling. The ultimate goal of counseling is the development of a mature self. In order to achieve this goal, counseling must give preference to the development of self-concept. Counseling should be treated as a continuous and lifelong process. Now you can try to answer these questions here. What are the basic elements that appear consistently in all counseling sessions? What makes school counseling program distinctive? How does the social situation affect counseling? What is the role of warmth in counseling? What elements make counseling effective? Now you may go through these books for further reference. Guidance in Today's School by Mortson, G. Donald and Schmuller Ellen, M. 1962, published by John Valley and Sons, New York. Guidance in Classroom by Strang Ruth and Morris Glynn, 1964, published by Collier and Macmillan Limited, London. Hope that you have enjoyed this session. We can meet again with another topic. Thank you.